Disdain to behold, John 20, 1 through 18. So this is the story of Easter morning, very early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, when Mary Magdalene went to the tomb where the crucified and dead Jesus had been buried. And it's while she's there at the tomb then that she notices that the stone has been rolled away from the tomb. And so she runs off and she finds two of Jesus's disciples, Simon Peter and the one in the text who is referred to as the beloved disciple, which we might infer is the author of the gospel itself. So we'll call him John. So Mary Magdalene runs and she finds Simon Peter and John, and she says to these two, "They have taken the Lord away, and we do not know where they have laid him." And so then the two disciples run to the tomb, and each of them in their own time looks into the tomb and enters into the tomb. And they notice the grave clothes that Jesus had been wearing lying there. And it says of one of those disciples, the beloved disciple, it says that he saw and he believed. But then the text says that those disciples, they then left and went back to their homes. But then the text draws a contrast with those two disciples. And the next line says, but Mary stood by the tomb, weeping outside the tomb. While Peter and John had left and gone back to where they had come from, Mary stood, or Mary stayed, or Mary lingered, or Mary abided. She waited outside the tomb, weeping. And that made all the difference for Mary, because as she stays there after the other two disciples have left, she herself then looks into the tomb and she sees in the tomb not the two disciples now that have left, but she sees two messengers or two angels who are standing or who are sitting there, one where the feet of Jesus would have been and one where the head of Jesus would have been. And she begins to speak with these two messengers, or they begin to speak with her. And after she's finished her conversation with them, then she hears a voice from behind her and she turns around and she begins to speak to someone that she thinks is the gardener, because the tomb is in a garden place. But when she looks at him, the text says that it was Jesus, the risen Jesus, but she did not know that it was Jesus. But she then knows that it is Jesus only after he speaks to her. So she sees him, but does not recognize him. But then it's through the sound of his voice calling her name, Mary, that she then recognizes him and calls his name, Rabboni, or my teacher. And then He tells her that he is ascending to the Father, so she should not cling on to him, should not hold on to him. But she says, go and tell my brothers, go and tell those same disciples that earlier had left and gone back to their homes, that I am ascending to your Lord and to my Lord, to your God and to my God. And so Mary then, she goes and she proclaims to those disciples, I have seen the Lord. And she tells them everything that Jesus had spoken to her. So Mary ends up with a proclamation. She has a message to share, even as a message was earlier shared with her. She encountered messengers or angels in the tomb. Now she becomes a messenger to others. And she has seen the Lord. That's also part of her testimony. She's a witness. I have seen the Lord. But she didn't get to that point of proclamation without first being present to the tomb. She stayed long enough, even when others had left, to then behold the risen Jesus, which then became the basis for her proclamation that Jesus is risen from the dead and that the grave has no power over the living God. And so it was by staying that Mary beheld and Mary proclaimed. And it is in staying, it is in lingering, it is in being present to Jesus, even when we might want to leave, that we also receive the glory of his presence and have a message to tell to the world. So go tell to the world this Easter, I have seen the Lord and Jesus lives. Amen.